All right, it looks like the recording has started. You may hear toenails clacking along the wood floor. We have three puppies, well, three dogs, and they do not respect the need for quiet very well. So you may hear me tell them to shut up occasionally in the kindest possible terms. All right, well, thank you very much for showing up tonight. This is the first meeting for Art 1130, the summer edition. Tonight, what I wanted to do is I have 6 things I wanted to touch on. And most of these will last about an hour and a half or so is what I'm planning on. And it's great to have people show up because then I can answer questions, but also we have a little bit more of an interaction and it makes it phenomenally less boring. How was your guys' semester? The end of the semester, did it work out okay?
It was good, just busy.
That's a shock. Okay, things are moving around a little bit on the screen because I'm just trying to adjust the computer. It should be okay now. I know that students have an awful lot of stress, particularly the last quarter of the semester. And this class, I want to make sure that we don't add to that stress as much as possible. If you guys had, if you were normal people and you had a normal life and everything was completely predictable, you would probably be taking in-person class. With the online one, we do have due dates and things like that. The due dates are there primarily to help you do your planning, plan which projects you're going to be doing, the sequence, all those kinds of things. Because I know that life is something that happens to everybody, I appreciate that not everything is going to be turned in on time, and that's all right. As long as you let me know what's going on, then usually we can work with it. With this course, everything is going to be recorded in these meetings, and then usually it takes about 2 hours. After the meeting, I'll have it put together and up on our Teams channel for the class, and I'll put a link in that. Let me show you what that will look, or where that will be. Let's see. Give me just a second here. Right, I'm sharing my screen with you for our class. This is the homepage for the class. If you scroll down here, this is the first module. Second module here is attendance. And in the attendance, you'll notice that I only have one thing set up right here that you can get to, and that is just the attendance and participation, where it describes what's going on. What we'll need to do is participate as much as possible, attend as much as possible. What that looks like on or during a internet class is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to. What that will mean is we have discussions. We'll need to post things to the discussions. We'll need to respond to things in the discussions. Some of the time, you'll need to just post stuff, and that's fine. Other times, you'll also need to respond to what other students post. If it's an assignment that requires a response, get your stuff posted as soon as you possibly can, so there's a larger pool of people to draw from and respond to. You'll notice that on this, these are still the dates from last semester. It's kind of odd, but I'll go through and fix them. Once I post, or once I get our class recording up on YouTube, I will update this date and put the link to our class recording right there. If you attend live, you won't need to watch this again. What you will need to do is submit 5 things right here. So I'm sorry, it should be 5 things. I guess I'll have to go through and edit that. But it should be 5 things that you learned and picked up as you're watching or attending live. So again, if you're here today, what you'll need to do is write down 5 things that you learned and submit that to get points for attending. And if you watch the recording, what you'll need to do is watch the recording and then write down 5 things that you learned. And those 5 things that you learn can be pretty much anything. Um, so if during the course you hear one of the dogs whining or they're getting to wrestle with each other, that can be one of the things, or something that one of the other students have said during the course of the meeting. It doesn't really matter. There needs to be 5 things just to show, excuse me, to show that you watched the whole thing. And that's important. I did mention in the emails and in the syllabus that you don't need to attend live. However, one of the reasons why I ask people what their schedules are like and try to get as many people as possible, we have about a third of the class right now, is because one thing that I've noticed, even though everybody who gets an A doesn't attend all these things live, I can pretty much guarantee that the 6 people that are here on this call with me tonight, if they continue, are going to be getting also the kind of people that will be earning A's. And it's just because of the commitment that people have. And I say that because it can be difficult to make sure that every week you watch the attendance video. That's important because that will help you to get your questions answered, as well as we can talk about different things. I can show examples that are beyond the examples shown in each module, and we can talk about those. But it also gives us a chance to say, for example, you don't get all the points and you want to know why. I can discuss that, some of the things that I notice as well. An example of that is we will be doing an annotated bibliography later on. The most common problem for preventing people from getting full points on the annotated bibliography is simple, easy to fix things like putting an accessed on phrase at the end of each of their citations. And that'll make more sense later on, but it is something that is a super easy fix. It usually takes 10 or 15 minutes to fix, but it makes a lot more sense if I can when I explain it during our team's meeting. Another thing that I've noticed as well is that you're here, and that's great. I have also noticed that the people that have their video camera on during these meetings are also the kind of people that will be getting better scores as well. And it's not because I keep track of all that, but it's because the person that does that generally is also the kind of person to make sure that their points are high enough that they don't need extra credit, for example. But I also understand if you're back from work and you're not feeling the best, or you're tired, or you're fixing dinner for yourself, then I get that as well. But I do invite you as much as possible to turn on your camera during these live meetings so that I can see and have a little bit of human interaction with you. All right, that is one thing. Thank you, Lynette and Whitney. Excellent. So that's 2 of our A students. I guess A plus, because everybody else are A students as well. Nicely done. What I would like to do for the rest of our time is, so we talked a little bit about attendance. Does that make sense to everybody about the attendance? You watch, oh, thank you, Sadie. You watch the video or you attend live, and then you write down 5 things that you learn. And the 5 things that you learn may be as simple as, for example, Hilda Klimt was the first woman or the first painter that really addressed issues of what later became known as abstraction. at the beginning of the 19th century. You know, and just that phrase. We won't be talking about her. I just think she's one of my superheroes, but we may be talking about Henry Moore. You may say, oh, I learned that one of the four tools of artistic critique is description, that kind of a thing. So you're looking for 5 to 7 word sentence to describe one thing that you learned, and that's it. And so for full attendance points, it'll be 5 things that you learn during the course of the meeting. Like, for example, one of the things you may write down for attending tonight's session is that your teacher really likes Larry Niven, and his screensaver is from Ringworld, one of Larry Niven's first books. Or a screen background, I should say. Now, what I would like, I know that this is super boring and everybody hates doing it, but we're going to be doing it anyway, because sometimes boring is what is necessary. I'm going to just walk through really quick the course overview and just show you some of the different things that are going on there. I know that that's what everybody expects in the first day that we meet, and it is super boring, but that's what we're going to, boring is my middle name. So, all right, here we have the course overview, and this is your home page. This is the first thing that shows up. I just want to demonstrate this and just show you how to navigate through here. And what I see is going to be a little bit different than what you see, because I get to edit and do things like that. On the written bits, you have this icon here, which is supposed to look like a page with the corner turned over. Hey guys, stop it. Hey. I'm hoping that Teams edits out some of the obnoxious sound of the dogs wrestling. One is a full-size standard poodle. The other one is a Airedale Terrier who's about the same size. Hey, guys, stop it. And they both have a certain amount of attitude. They're kind of annoying. Okay, so as we look at this, you have the syllabus here. And I hope everybody has read through that. It gives you a lot of information. The big thing on this that is very important is right towards the beginning. We have, okay, the finals thing is going to be a little bit different because we do have the final exam schedule page here, but the final for our class will be 4 standardized questions that I will ask. They're essay questions, and I will open that up on the first day. Hey, excuse me. Guys, stop it. Stop it. And I will open that up on the first day of the finals week, and then you can go through, answer that, and submit it on through Canvas at any point during the entirety of finals week. Can you guys hear me okay with the dogs wrestling in the background? Okay, I will do my best to ignore them. They manage pretty well for critters as big as they are with brains the size of tangerines, but oh well. So that's how our final exam will look like. I mentioned this, don't pay attention to this first sentence because we won't need to be worrying about the final exam schedule. Like I said, it will open up as an assignment that you can do online and submit between during the 5 days of finals week, essentially. I would like you to read through here. This is rather important information. If you feel at any point that you are getting overwhelmed with any of your classes, I highly recommend that you contact the Office of Accommodations on campus. I've already had somebody, and that's also something, if you need help or you need extra time. I just found out, for example, a couple years ago that I am on the spectrum, and more recently I found out that I actually have ADHD, which came as no surprise at all to anybody in my family. But if there's any issues like that that are affecting or impacting your ability to do the work, please talk to the accommodations office, because if they can't help you directly, they know the people that you can contact on campus that can help you. Another thing that's very important is our text. Remember, everybody should have that email I sent out. Did everybody get the email? I sent 2 emails. Okay. The text is really important. This is the dynamics of three-dimensional design, or shaping space, the dynamics of three-dimensional design. There are about a half dozen textbooks that have that very similar title. So it's important to look for one by Zelansky and Fisher. Second or third edition is preferred, but, and I'll come back to that big but in just a second. I gave in that email, that's important because I gave 6 different ways that you can get a hold of this. We are not doing it through the campus bookstore because we found out that it's extraordinarily expensive. And I don't want anybody to spend more than $30 on this. You can go to Amazon and buy one for $500 if you really like to. I'd rather you don't. If you take 15, 20, 30 minutes to do a little bit of research, you can usually find one on eBay, or better yet, Facebook Marketplace. And I would prefer you go to Facebook Marketplace first, just because previous students, I recommended that they sell their copies on Facebook Marketplace. And so do that first, then eBay, and you can also rent one from Amazon. But you can also go to archive.net. I'm like 87% sure it is archive. That is the right suffix. Let me double check here. Okay, then it's archive.org, and I will make that change right now. Okay, yes, it's archive.org. So give me just a second and I will make that change. Archive.org will let you check out for the small token of your email, and you will get access for $1, or sorry, for an hour at a time. And then it will shut you out of the system, but it's not a big deal because you can go back onto the system, give it about 15 minutes, reset, go back onto the system, and then it's fine. One thing that I've noticed, though, is that archive.org, I guess there's like a million other people that are also trying to access it all at the same time. So try not to wait until the last second to do your quiz, and if you're going to be using the online book. Okay, so I've changed that. It's archive.org is the right one. And then this one, that will let you, like I said, you can sign up for a free account with your email, and it will give you access for about an hour at a time. The quizzes should take you about 30 to 40 minutes. So that should be just fine. Okay, and it looks like I need to fix that in one more spot, so I'll do that too. Sorry about that. Now, could you guys tell me, how have you gotten your textbooks coming?
I found mine on Amazon. It was a used copy, so I think I only paid like $8 for it. Like you can scroll down and click like it'll show you, if it's used or whatever, and it'll tell you the condition. So this is the one I found.
Oh, that's perfect. That is absolutely perfect. $8 is terrific. That is so much. When we were first setting up this class, one of the things that was really frustrating is we found out if we went through the on-campus bookstore, it was going to be like $90. No, and you're right, Whitney, it is just not worth it. But $8 is definitely worth it. And if you wait a little bit and you have to rent it, there's a couple different places that you can rent from, and you can rent from, I think it's like 15 to 35 bucks depending on the site. And you just have to do a search for which site you want to go to. Now I'm going to move things around a little bit because the Airedale wants to lick the screen on my computer. Okay. All right, so I took care. Please, could somebody go and check the syllabus and on your computer and make sure that I've fixed that? All the extensions should say archive.org. So is that showing correctly now for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Now I'm going to go back and share my screen again. Let's see. Another thing I really appreciate about you that are here tonight is you guys want to hazard a guess what the attention span of a goldfish is when you're training it to eat on one side of its bowl? Anybody want to guess?
3 seconds.
Yeah, well, it's right close to about 5 seconds. So yeah, not very much. Do you want to guess what the average attention span of the college and university students across the country is? 4.2 seconds. It's actually less than a goldfish. So the fact that you guys are here and engaged, I really appreciate it. You are setting the standard for the anti-average. So thank you very much. So we already talked about attendance, how attendance works for this. Does that make sense to everybody about that? You either attend live or you watch it and then you just submit 5 sentences about the things that you learned. Does that make sense to everybody? Excellent. And that will go online. Usually it takes about an hour. With my internet connection, it takes about an hour to download it, do what little editing I need to, and then it takes about another hour to upload it. So about 2 hours is what we're looking for after the end of our weekly session. On this page, it also gives you a little bit of information about me. The prep for first day of class, it should be like first week of class. So this, I'm talking a little bit about that. Oh, look at that. I'm sorry, I have to edit this again. I thought I had gone through and fixed all that. That's annoying. So it should say archive.org. Okay, there we go. The first day of class, what I wanted you to do, and we'll get to it in just a second, is go to the polyhedra.net and find an object with at least 7 faces printed out flat, and then cut it and start assembling it. And hopefully everybody will have that done by Sunday, is what I'm hoping for. And then what I've noticed is that I went through, almost everybody in the class has already done this. So that is great. And the people that haven't done it have been the people that were on wait lists until just a short while ago. So that's great. I'm sorry, let's see. One thing that is kind of baffling to me about Canvas is that when it's intuitive user interface design, what that means is it's intuitive to the people that are designing it, not necessarily the people that are actually using it. So it's difficult for me to understand, like over here you see Microsoft Teams classes, Teams meetings. You guys should be getting automated reminders about when our scheduled Teams meetings are and stuff. And it surprises me every semester when people actually do. And that's why a couple minutes before I will resend the link. And I've gone online, I've worked with the tech support people, I fixed it for a bit, then it flubs up again. So I don't understand entirely why that is. But I will be sending the attendance links for our Teams meetings right before class as well. In our course schedule, that is still something that we really need to talk about if it's frustrating to anybody. Sometimes we go really fast, sometimes it seems like we're going really slow. A lot of that just depends on where people are and how fast you're responding to material. And like I said, the due dates are there for general guidelines as we move forward. One thing I do want to stress is this exceptional care section. Go through and check that out, and student success in the School of the Arts. One thing I really enjoy about UVU is there is a significant amount of dedication on the part of the university to the success of everybody that attends. There are a phenomenal number of first generation university graduates going through UVU. There is just a ridiculous amount of community involvement with students volunteering and working for nonprofits in the area and different things like that. And the school is really invested in helping you to succeed. One of the things you'll also notice, one of the assignments here is working towards globalism, interculturalism designation. UVU is setting the standard in the United States for the globalization or the globalized perspective of its student body. I don't know if you guys knew that, but they are coming up with programs, routines, and processes to help you as rapidly as possible to really be a solid member of a global community, and which I think is astounding. One of the things that I really want to talk about, and we'll talk about it more next week as well, is you'll notice this introduction to the tools of artistic critique. And I give a couple references to it. And right here, there's a video I want you to watch. We won't watch it tonight, but I want you to watch it about the application of the tools of artistic critique. When somebody asks you about critique, what is the very first word that comes to mind? If somebody asks, if you ask somebody for a critique, I'm sorry, Lynette?
Oh, I generally think like a criticism, but not necessarily a bad criticism, but just like looking at their work and giving feedback.
Yeah, and that is one of the things. It's almost like criticism becomes a bad word because you expect it to hurt somehow. And I think that is really incorrect. Not what you said, Lynette, but I think that is, we have gotten into the habit of using the word incorrectly. Critique and critical actually mean with intent, on purpose. It does not mean harmful, which is typically what we expect to hear. When somebody says, oh, I like it, but, or this could be better if. And that's not what criticism is about. What criticism should be, and what we are using the word critique to infer in this class, is thinking with intent, using precise language, and organizing our observations. So when we communicate to somebody, if we see a piece of art that somebody else has done, instead of saying, oh, that's pretty, but I would have done this, we want to be able to say something along the lines of, I can really see that you are paying attention to the use of color to drive an emotional response from this object that you've made. The craftsmanship is really dead on. You took a lot of care and thought into making it, and that's evident with how it's put together. And I really like how it's balanced. I mean, the texture of both the strokes that you use to paint it, as well as the texture of the materials that you use to cover it, build up a certain rhythm that kind of reward you for looking at it closely. Now, I've said basically the same thing as, yes, that's pretty, but by using big person words and being able to use a little bit of precise vocabulary when I talk about how I've organized my thoughts and looking at it, it sounds a lot more productive. It sounds a lot more practical, doesn't it? And I think that this is really an important tool, not just for looking at other things, but looking at our own work. if you're an artist, it is synonymous with being hypercritical of your own work. All of you are perfectionists. All of you constantly look at your own stuff and assume that there's things that are bad. Do you know how many people in the world will notice whatever it is that you see wrong with your work? Pretty much one. It's almost always going to be you are the one who's the most observant of the failings of your work, because we're hypercritical of ourselves. But by using the tools of artistic critique, and we'll touch on them really briefly, and we'll go over them more next week. What is nice about that is we are able to give articulation to our observation and be able to see not only how we've done really well on our own projects, but then we can also articulate why maybe things are falling a little bit flat for our observation. And we see, and by being able to emotionally take a step back and approaching it almost clinically with using precise language, then we're able to avoid hurting our own feelings pretty much. And it's one of those things where we can look at it and say, well, this isn't a failure because they did a really good job. But what I'm seeing is that perhaps I need to spend more time on the texture. So I want to go over those really quick here. Or like I said, we'll go over them more later on, but we'll touch on them pretty much every time that we're together. There are 4 basic tools of artistic critique. And one thing that I want you to pay attention to is how much of your own thinking or emotion you put into each of these tools. And I hope you notice something that I'll point out in just a little bit. The first one is description. All we're doing is talking about the visual facts of the piece. Who made it, what the title is, when it was made, the medium or media, if we can see what they are. Here we're also talking about height, depth, breadth. We're talking about color, probably texture. We're talking about essentially the items or the features of the thing that we're looking at and how that thing we're looking at impacts the shared world, essentially. An example of that is if I'm holding up an, let's see, I'm going to cut off sharing really quick. If I hold this up, instead of labeling it as a tape dispenser, what I would do for description, particularly this side because it's more interesting, is I would start talking about maybe it's a little bit over 2 inches high, maybe it's a little bit over 3 inches long. It has this round shape on one end that kind of comes out to a protrusion over on the other side. And there's looks like flexible material that connects the round area to the protrusion as the protrusion hooks up. Then I also see this green visual texture coloring the front side of it. So you see how that's a little bit different? I'm trying to be relatively precise when I'm talking about it. The next step of the next tool of artistic critique is analysis. And this is when we try to figure out how the artist or the creator of the piece put it together. And this can be as simple as, well, we'll go back to the tape dispenser again. I know it's really boring, but there it is. This, to me, it looks really smooth in a lot of areas. It looks to me that the material is a little bit flexible and makes kind of a clicking sound if you rub your fingernail on it. The material, I believe, it's transparent, a lot of it. And then this material is kind of translucent. So I'd say that this is probably made out of plastic, and it's probably made in an injection molder. It looks to me like the plastic has been injected into a mold, and that is one way that it gets its smoothness. And then I also see that whoever made it has put a little piece of metal with jaggedy edges right here into it, and that looks like it's clipped in to the plastic body. And then if we look over here, it looks like this flexible plastic here has been attached in such a manner so that there's clips holding this circle in place so it can still rotate freely. So again, I'm talking about something that is relatively obvious, but I'm trying to use precise language to discuss it and describe it. I'm not describing it. I'm talking about specifically how it was put together. So this first one, I am trying to step back completely and just talk about the object as it is, what I see. Here, I'm injecting a little bit of my imagination and trying to guess how the artist put it together. Now on this, I'm injecting more of my imagination. Most of the time, when we look at art, we are having a conversation with whoever made the thing that we're looking at, but the conversation is generally going to be a little bit one-sided. Or if it's two-sided, it will be us having a conversation with an imaginary projection of whoever the hypothetical person who made it is. So we don't have a chance to talk to Picasso, for example, but if we see some Picasso art, then interpretation, we kind of imagine ourselves talking to an avatar of Picasso, for lack of a better term. So we inject a little bit more of our imagination into this. And this is when we start talking about maybe the decisions that the artist made and what they reveal about the artist's worldview. I have no idea what the artist's worldview is of this, but I think it has an awful lot to do with a business model of the world where somebody sees one problem, and the problem might be things need to be stuck together, and then they come up with a simple solution, something that sticks the things together. This is very useful and practical in a way that perhaps glue is not. It doesn't do everything that glue does, but it does have the benefit of being able to stick stuff together, usually on a two-dimensional plane. We'll be using it just a little bit. Again, I have no idea what the worldview of the artist is, but I'm thinking it probably has something related to a business sense where the person sees a need and then tries to fill it. And that's about it. And then the last step, let's see, is judgment or evaluation. Is it successful in what it's doing? And you notice that each of these, I have a couple questions to consider that we've written down. How accessible for interpretation, how accessible is it? Does it work, contain symbols, etc.? For evaluation, has your interaction with the piece changed since you first looked at it? What your initial response is, and how has that changed? Do you think that, probably most importantly, do you think that this object that we're looking at has an intrinsic value, or is it successful in what it's doing? Like for this, if all this is designed to do is fit or to fulfill one need that a potential consumer might have, I think it does a really good job. It is very easy to use. You can pull off bits of tape that of several different lengths. This is a little bit over an inch. I can make it longer. I can make it shorter. One of my brothers, when he was a kid, loved to unravel the tape and just string it out for as long as he possibly could, because he wanted to see if it actually is going to be whatever, 300 yards, whatever it says it is. But I'd say that this is pretty successful for what it is. It's designed ergonomically, so a typical hand can hold it pretty conveniently, and it does fulfill a need. So I think it is, my evaluation would be successful. During those 4 steps, from the first one to the last one, what is something that you notice about the injection of my imagination? The first step, I'm not using much of my imagination at all. I'm just trying to describe the physical aspects of whatever it is that I'm looking at or examining. How much of my imagination is being used when I try to interpret it or evaluate it?
I would say all of it, because you're kind of building, like each step you're putting more and more together. So by the end, you're using all the information that you have to interpret what you're looking at.
Yeah, exactly. As we get down to the 4th step, we are applying more and more of our own personal observations and imagination. Sometimes interpretation and evaluation are effective when you know who the artist is and you do some research on the artist. Like, for example, when I first came to Picasso Cubism, I got motion sickness. I wanted to vomit. I did not like it very much at all. But as I found out more about what they were trying to do, what the Cubists were trying to do, like, for example, Edward Maybridge, a few years earlier, had started publishing his works about movement of forms, where he's the photographer who took rapid sequence photographs so you could actually see what a horse was doing while it was running, or while a person was walking, or while a rabbit was hopping. And his work was instrumental in creating the framework for modern cinematography. And so Picasso and the other Cubists were trying to demonstrate moments of time, sharing them all at the same time on one canvas or one situation. Another thing that they were doing is they were kind of sick of the idea that art just existed by itself, and they depended on their audience being smart and being able to interact with the art. And so they were trying to create an atmosphere so that when you approach the art, it was really important for you to kind of figure out what was going on and participate in it. And that meant that a big part of what completed the art was the observation of the observer. You know, that whole process, you helped to make it and finish it. And once I started appreciating that, then Cubism became a lot more easy to understand, or at least respect. And so sometimes doing a little bit of outside research does help, but not always. And exactly like Whitney said, as you go down through each step, you rely more and more on your own imagination and your own personal involvement in the piece to help gain a better understanding of it. Again, I would watch the video that you see, and I both in what we just saw, where it talks about the four tools, and then also the introduction to the four tools. There's the same video is linked in both of those. And that, I just realized I was scratching the side right here. I was not picking my nose, and I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out so nobody was grossed out and threw up. But it's very important to go through those tools of artistic critique, because that is something that we will rely on. Every module will have to look at some artists that do the things related to that module. We'll look at several different perspectives on it, and then you'll have to write about usually just maybe 3 to 5 paragraphs about your observations of the different artists that you saw. And you'll need to use those tools of artistic critique, not just for this class, but I find that they apply to almost every situation. When you can use critical or intentional thinking, it helps you so that you can respond to something instead of reacting to it. You know, you can respond with thinking. One of the reasons why language is important, I'll just give an example. Were you aware that before about 300 or 400 BC, the word blue or its equivalent did not exist in any of the North African or Mediterranean languages? So it wasn't there. When Greeks would, there's a body of literature called the Homeric Hymns. You have Homer's writings about the Iliad and the Odyssey. When Greeks would write about the sky or the sea, which are things we typically think of as blue, they would talk about the wine dark sea, or they would talk about the brilliant sky. They never used the word blue. After Homer, right around 2nd or 3rd century BC, it starts showing up. For whatever reason, you start seeing the word blue appearing in Greek writing and Roman writing. Why? I have no idea. But it's interesting to me. Did that exist beforehand? I'm pretty sure it did, because blue references a particular visual wavelength. But it would I don't see how people could actually write about it. Now there's a whole bunch of illusions that we use in our speaking as well as literature about blue. You know, there's emotions it references. There's different impacts blue has just because of the color. Like, for example, Mesopotamia and Egypt, blue is used to symbolize the vault of heaven, you know, and is a reference to divinity. So I know it has a purpose, but it just fascinates me that nobody talked about it before that. There's other really odd examples too. Do any of you have, I'm going to use my own self as a reference to this. Do any of you have any life experience with teenage boys? I say this because as my brothers and I were growing up, we would look at the fridge when my mom would ask us to get something and we couldn't see it the first 2 or 3 times we looked in. Then when she described it to us, we could almost always find it. And it's one of those things where I actually could not see whatever it was until somebody described it, and I formed a visual image in my mind using their language to actually know what to expect. And I think that's fascinating. That's true of a lot of us. Sometimes we don't think about things because we don't have the words to describe them. And so that's another reason why these tools of artistic critique are important, to give us the vocabulary to help us to describe, because it also actually helps us to see that as well. So I think we've beaten that particular module to death. I do want to talk a little bit about, and we'll talk more about this next Thursday as well, but I do want to talk a bit about what a module looks like going through in a sculpture-based photography. This first module, we are talking about things like just an awareness, pretty much, of three-dimensional form and how we can express that with photography. And as you go through this particular module, you'll notice that there are a number of different parts of it. I have this little thing set on complete all items, so you will need to go through and open each page in sequence, at least before you start submitting your final assignments. I do that because it really helps people to understand and discover background as they prepare for their assignments. If we go to the background here, what this does is we talk about several different artists in this, and each of them use this idea of sculptural photography or photographs of sculpture in their artwork, and it's a principal component of their artwork. So I want you to watch the videos of each of these artists, and you can see each of them have a little bit of a different take on what this whole process is. Andy Goldsworthy works out in nature, takes photos and films of his sculptures as he builds them with entirely natural materials that he finds outside. Sandy Skoglund, what she does is she does a lot of sculpture where she will make sculptural environments, essentially, and then photograph the sculptural environments with human models inside. And so, and that's what her art is, you know, the final photo that's taken out of a three-dimensional environment. Okay. Can you guys still hear me? The dogs are being kind of rambunctious. Okay. Guys, stop it. It doesn't work very much, but it makes me feel like I'm doing something. And then what you will need to do for this module is build, well, each module is kind of set up like this, where there's a little bit of a reading. It tells you what part to read. Then the quiz tells you what chapters to read on the quiz. And then this background, it gives you a list of anywhere from 5 to 8 artists. And I want you to find those go to those links, find the videos, watch the videos about them and learn about them, just to give you some idea of what they're doing. And then this is an example of the artist review, where you're going to write about that particular artist. And this, you'll note each one has paragraph prompts, and I want you to write specifically to those paragraph prompts. So, for example, looking at that group of artists, what did you learn about all these artists together? Then which of those artists that you looked at, and there's like 7 or 8 of them, which one did you like the most and why? This is where you need to be able to articulate with specifics, so refer to those tools of artistic critique. And then give a brief explanation of the ways the artist did things to involve you as a viewer. Now, a paragraph is going to be, there's 3 paragraphs. Each paragraph is going to need to have 2 to 5 sentences, and you'll get scored with references to the proper body of artists, which is the artists that are in that background set. So I'm sorry, we go to this module, and the artist review refers to the artists in the background section right beforehand. Not random artists, not artists that are drawn from the textbook, but each artist review refers specifically to the artist in the background within that same module. And then we go to the assignment, which is sculpture-based photography. In your kit, you have cardstock. And what I want you to do is go to these websites. Charles Young does some amazing stuff with cardstock, colored cardstock, and making little small scale homes. And then he makes animations and videos about it. And I'll show you this tab. This is just his website. And you can see, you don't have to animate anything, but that website gives you some really good ideas about what kind of structures you can possibly make. And then you'll notice that I also have links to videos that talk about how to make a cardboard house, miniature house using folders, different things like that. And then this is an example of what students have done with the houses they've made and the photos that they've taken. You'll need to take 5 different photos of using different perspectives on the house. This particular one, the person took photos with the house in a tree, in a field, with their chickens, different things like that. And you can see that they put a lot of detail in the house, so it was fun to actually make and photograph. And all of you guys are professional artists, and so I do expect a certain level of process. If you read the description for this assignment, we expect that the house is made so it can stand physically, and it can endure the trauma that you take it through as you walk around with it and take different photos. I also expect that the photos are interesting to you and fun for you to make. I think one of the least successful examples of this is when a student put the house down and then took 5 photos as they were walking around it. And that's not what we want to see. What we are looking for is, after you've watched the background videos about all these different artists, kind of allow that to inform your creativity. Maybe you want to take a photo of that really up close to the house. Maybe the house has holes in it, and you'll put your phone on the inside of the house and take a photo looking out through the window. Maybe you'll take a photo of it in a refrigerator and another one next to a stream. Maybe you'll even make like a 3-second video of it with the chickens pecking it. That's fine. But I want you to do 5 different ones that are interesting, intriguing, and fun for you to make. You can also use a filter on one of them. Make it sepia, make it look antique. But you can see that the level, each of these houses are no bigger than about 6 inches. Basically, your 2 fists put together. And you can see on these examples, people have made some really interesting ones and fun ones. Most of these have taken a couple hours to build, but you can also see that one of the consistent things is there's a lot of fun texture that make it enjoyable to photograph. And they are built sturdy enough that you can see that they have withstood the rigors of moving around and photographing in several different places. A lot of students will do this. These are of the same house. This is an extreme close-up, and this is quite a bit further away. And some students will take maybe 10 or 15 shots and then just save the 5 that they like the most. Some of them will put lights inside, the battery tea lights or whatever, and take photos under different kinds of time periods or different lighting conditions. So this one, these three, this one, and this one are all from the same student in the same house. So there's a lot of different kinds of fun ones. And then the documentation of the photographs that you take of this house that you've built. And then you also will need to edit it together. Not edit it together, maybe necessarily so much as find the best images, crop them until they look good, and then submit them. And for each one, you'll also need to provide a work log. And there is a specific place to put the work log on, but it's important for you to keep track of your time as you work on these things. As professional artists, why do you think it's important that the department would want you to keep track of your time?
Because time is money.
Yes, exactly. That is a foundational principle of all professionalism. You have to value your time. A lot of the times as artists, what people don't see is the hours and hours of thinking and prep. All they see is that final object. They just see that one little thing. Picasso, famously at one point, a woman came up to him in a restaurant and gave him a napkin and a pen and said, "I'll pay whatever you want, whatever you ask. Would you mind drawing something for me?" He looked at the napkin for a second and scribbled something down, did a really quick cubist portrait of the woman. And he turned to her and said, $10,000. And she said, "What? It only took you a second." And he said, "Yes, ma'am, but it took me 40 years to get to that second." And that's something that you guys, particularly as artists, need to be mindful of, that when you are producing work for somebody, you need to value your time. And that's why each of these assignments, you'll see there is a required work log to submit. And I showed you what each of the first couple work logs will have example work logs. And that is something that you'll need to keep track of. It doesn't have to be really precise. I'll show you what the example is for this module 1.
So I have a question. Is the module or is the work log for the entire module? So like would we document us being on these videos as well as reading and the project, or is it just for the project?
It's going to be for everything you do in the module. And so I don't necessarily know if you need to include the time that you are on the call or watching the team's recording, because that is taken account for when you do your attendance, but everything else that you do in the module. So reading the chapters in the textbook and doing the artist research, watching those videos, all that stuff, constructing the house and everything else. So does that make sense? I think one of the two of the most important things for the work log is that the work log needs to be for the module that it is linked to. Like for example, several of the research modules, your work log is only going to consist of 1 or 2 lines and is only going to be like an hour and a half. But it needs to be for that research module. For module 1, it's going to include everything within that module. And then one thing that you'll notice as well is that at the bottom of this example, it says total time. That is really vital. You won't get credit for submitting your work log without the total time. And you notice that this is not necessary. It doesn't even need to be this exact or precise. But what I'm basically saying is I am aware of each of the times during each of the days that I worked and spent energy on that module. Does that make sense? Okay. All righty. Did you hear that? The little squeal of the dog? Okay. It's nice to know that Teams edits out a lot of the sound because they were being a little bit rambunctious. Fatheads. We also have a little 4.5 or 4 pound Chihuahua, and she always has perfect behavior, so she's never a problem ever. Except for when she gets really bored and then she starts crying because she thinks that we're going to pay attention to her if she cries. But, you know, just like all of my children, whenever they cry, completely ignore them because that's how I roll. Now, this is one of the research modules. One of the components for this class is also doing research or service learning. And we'll talk more about that next week. I do have things to say. You see that this is going to be coming due next week, so we will talk about it. Read this stuff before class, and then this should be due on the Sunday after class. But I want to give you a heads up on it. You have the option. There are some elements of this that everybody needs to do, like everybody needs to do the artist research. And essentially, we'll talk about more about that later. But there's a list of 85 artists, and I think you'll pick 12 of them. And the research is going to be essentially plugging their name into a search engine with the word art afterwards. And then you'll find one of their pieces and give 3 to 5 word description on it. And that's about as in-depth as that research gets. That is the artist list that's right here. And I give an example. We'll talk more about it next Thursday, or this coming Thursday. And then with this first module, research module 7.A, one of the things we'll talk about is service learning. Everybody will need to watch the second disaster video, and then you're going to make a decision as if you're going to do the artist research part of the project process, or if you're going to spend the next couple months finding something in the community, a need in the community, and then using your specific skill set as an artist to help out and fulfill that. Last semester, one example is that somebody was a social media graphic designer, and they actually went up to Salt Lake Community College with the intent of just helping out the student service organization there that was helping students to organize their portfolios for potential professional interviews. And what they ended up doing is mentoring about 6 or 7 students through the process of putting together their portfolio, using their experience that they had as a professional artist. So that was very interesting service learning project. So you'll go through this material next week and figure out what you want to do, but you'll notice that there's a work log here, and the work log, this particular one, is just for the things you do for research on module 7A, which is this particular module. And then another thing that we will talk about next week is, I glossed over that without asking any questions. Do you guys have any questions about that? Of course, we're going to cover it more next week, but and we'll talk about what we're doing with that. So moving forward, next week, one of the things that we're going to be doing is talking more about this, becoming or being a diversity collaborator. And we will talk more about this next week, and then we will do our discussion the following week, so 2 weeks away. Being a diversity collaborator is really important. Everybody's different, everybody's unique, and everybody is equally has a voice that is equally important. As artists, we are in a particularly interesting space where we don't have to wait for government to tell us what to do, and we don't have to be the marketing specialist to manipulate anybody else's perspectives. What we can do, real art is never jealous. And as artists, what we can do is celebrate those people around us who have a different voice than ours, which is absolutely everybody, by not necessarily creating art that targets them or celebrates them directly, but by finding the points of contact that we have and using art as a vehicle to explore our differences, because everybody is different. And this is a particularly sensitive spot today because with the way that marketing works on Facebook and different social media sites, I don't know if you're aware of this, but marketing or search engines on social media sites are targeted specifically towards two things. One is confirmation bias, where it supports you in your own perspectives as you come into something. And the other is emotionally charging. Social media tries to find things that will get you emotionally involved, whether that's cute little puppy videos or obnoxious people in the news. You know, there are about 200 billion hours of human activity every single day. But we only see the most despicable, horrible, and nasty 22 minutes of that in the news. And the reality is almost everybody is nice and responsive. I went to Iran several years ago. To a complete stranger on the other side of the world, I held out my hand to shake his hand, and he automatically, without thinking about it, put his hand out to shake mine. Because at their core, human beings are nice. We really can't help that. So all that being put together, this idea of being a diversity collaborator is really important because it gives us an opportunity to use our art and use our awareness of the art that other people do to be aware of those triggers that are divisive, as well as to be aware of those things that people do to bring us together. So I want you to read this. Let's see, today's 16th. I think we will be talking about this next week. So it's important to go through this and look at this as well. We're talking specifically about race, and which actually race was invented as an idea in the 1700s, believe it or not, during European colonialism. If you watch these videos about the history of that kind of thing being used as a tool of divisiveness, you'll find out that it's actually that's not a made-up claim. But it was invented, and it's something that today is very, very real and hurts a lot of people. So I'd like you to go through that. And then the assignment is, on our discussion board, there's going to be 3 parts. And what you'll need to do is go back to this as people are responding and fill it out. We'll discuss it during the class, and then you'll go back and add some more things. But how has art been used to both divide and unite along the issues of race? So in this discussion, this is what we'll need to be doing. We'll try to find examples of both dividing with art and uniting with art. For dividing, this is what I found. This was something from 1940s police manuals in the Soviet Union, where they were talking about typical features of standardized features of typical criminals and their races. And you notice this, we have somebody who's from Kazakhstan, we have somebody who's from Uzbekistan, we have somebody who's from the Ukraine. And these are what the Soviet police were told to look for when you're hunting for a criminal in these particular areas. This is what they're going to look like. Can you see how that would be divisive? This is an example of extreme racial profiling when everybody's speaking the same language, everybody has the same concerns, but this was how the police were expected to do their job. And then my example of uniting is talking about the Ottoman era in Turkey, where Muslim Ottoman emperors would, one of the reasons why their empire was so successful for so long is that they would support artists of every different faith being able to go and do and learn about their things. And they would get artists to work together. They had a vibrant art culture because the artists learned from each other. Muslims, who are very iconoclastic traditionally, would send Orthodox Christians to Italy to learn how to paint icons so they could go back and put icons of saints in their churches in Ottoman Turkey, which I thought was fascinating. And you would have communities of Christians, Jewish, and Muslim populations where they would take turns taking care of each other's interests during the week, so that the Christians could celebrate their faith on Sundays, the Jews would celebrate their faith on Saturdays, and the Muslims would celebrate their faith on Fridays. They knew that their friends would be taking care of the communities when they would put their energy into worship on those different days. And I think that that's really interesting that they would do that. And then we'll have a class discussion about what we find, and then the last part is to write a written reflection. So those are all important things that we'll be looking at next week. Now, I know that there is a burning question. All of you are terrifically excited about it. Two burning questions. One, you'll see that there's a module that's open called Applying the Tools of Artistic Critique. We will talk more about that next week. But the other burning question that everybody has is, what in the heck? Notice I didn't say hell because this is being recorded for future use and I didn't want to be offensive. What the heck did I have to print that stupid page out? Well, I wanted to show you this really quick. And this will be the last thing we talk about and then you guys can ask questions. When we print out those pages, I like that polyhedra site because what the person has done is find three-dimensional solids, and then they create these nets that we can print out on flat pieces of paper, and then you cut them and you start folding them in different ways. And then what is happening as you start following the directions? And we're going to do this really quickly on this one that I cut out. And the one that I cut out is the rhombicosidodecahedron. And I will not tell you how many days I spent practicing that word so it flowed effortlessly off of my tongue. And what is happening as you were cutting and folding the object? What was happening to that two-dimensional plane as you were folding and taping it together?
It became 3D instead of 2D.
Yeah, it started transforming shape. Now, of the six of the people here, would each of you please tell me what your background is, what kind of art you do, and where you are? Like if you do social media, graphic design, you've been doing that for 15 years or whatever, or you are a restorer of ancient artifacts and you've been casting dinosaur bones for 15 years or whatever. Each of you, please go around and tell me what kinds of things you do as an artist.
Wait, okay, I'll go. So I don't really consider myself like an artist per se, but I feel like I am creative. Um, I'm a graphic design major. And within the last couple of years, I've done work with my daughter's school, like on the PTA. So I've usually like volunteered to make the flyers for events or invitations, for things that we're doing to post on social media. So it's not necessarily professional, but I felt like I had the skill and the creative abilities to be able to like volunteer my time. Sophie, stop. Volunteer my time for that. So,
Okay, so would you call yourself primarily a 3D artist then? Or a 2D, or what do you normally focus on when you do the volunteering?
um, usually like digital stuff. So, I mean, I guess I would say 2D. And then
Okay.
as far as 3D, I guess I do like sewing and I've made like blankets and quilts and stuff. So I guess that could kind of be 3D because I have to like put together the fabric and the patterns to try to like create stuff like that, but I don't know if that's considered art or not. So,
Well, I do pattern piece quilting, and stained glass and stuff like that is very definitely art.
okay.
It doesn't have to be, but when you take care and use intent, then it can be very easily.
Okay.
So
Well,
yeah,
then, yeah,
excellent.
I
Thank
guess, yeah, like I said, I feel I'm more creative than an artist. Like, I'm not necessarily an artist, but I do feel like I'm creative. So I'm excited to see like what I can kind of come up with this semester and see if it can change that. So,
Okay, that's great. Excellent. Thank you. Right, and then one of the people in here is at work, so they're listening to us, but they can't, their work is preventing them from responding verbally. They said that they are a Photoshop illustrator. And they create menus and flyers and things like that. So most of their work is 2D. That's very cool too. Excellent. All right, who's next?
I guess I can go since I'm on camera too. Um, I definitely think of myself as an artist. I love all types of art. I find it all really interesting. Primarily, I do digital illustrations. I hope to someday do book covers. That sounds really cool. But I also crochet. I like to just do things with my hands. So I'm working on a blanket right now, but I also like woodworking. So like cutting out little pieces of wood and trying to build things. But all of it is really interesting to me. So painting, digital, I'll do it all.
All right, excellent, wonderful. So it's kind of an eclectic mix of different things. All right, wonderful. All right, who's next?
I can go next.
Okay, Sylvia.
I'm primarily like a 2D artist. I love oil painting, water painting, with just like watercolor and acrylic and everything, but primarily oil. I've done different like fabric art as well, but not so much sculpture or 3D type stuff. So I'm interested to learn all of that.
All right, great, excellent. Who's next? Sadie or Lexi?
I can go.
Okay, Lexi.
I am a graphic designer, so I also mostly work with like Photoshop and Illustrator. I do like digital art. And so I do a lot of it on my iPad, and so I like to do a lot of that. It's mostly 2D though. I've done a little bit of 3D just with classes I've taken, and working with like Cinema 4D, and so it was really interesting to get to do, and I really liked it, but mostly 2D, and also creating flyers and things for work.
All right, excellent, very good. How about you, Sadie? What do you do primarily?
I do a lot of digital illustration and then I also like traditional painting, but I want to work in the animation industry, so I've done like 3D stuff in Maya. And then I also really enjoy like clay and pottery and that kind of sculpture work.
All right, excellent, very good. Almost everybody has a lot of experience with 2D, if not that being their primary focus, which is really good. What I have noticed is that when people are focusing significant, and all of you have a lot of work experience, which is also really good. What I've noticed is that when people are heavily invested in 2D art, sometimes they can give themselves headaches in this class because it's not an animation 3D design class. It's not, we're not using computers, we're using pipe cleaners and rolled up paper and foam and carving and stuff like that. And you are going to make a mess, which is kind of fun, but there are some challenges going from the 2D world into 3D space. One of the things I want you to know is when you are, for example, doing a project and submitting it, if you don't get all the points, you can go back and rework it with the things we talk about, make the change, whatever changes you need to, so that you feel a lot more successful in the work. You can, the quizzes, you can retake as many times as you need to get a perfect score. You can redo the writing as many times as you need to get a perfect score. And when we're doing sculptures and stuff, if you find out later on, well, I should have done that, or I could have done that, and you want to go back and rework it, that's perfectly fine. You can do that. That's no problem at all. And if you don't get a perfect score, I'll explain why, and which elements to focus on in the assignment and things like that. And sometimes it's just really confusing for some people. And when we talk about it together as a group like this, a lot of the times that will help. And what's interesting to me, the students that don't like the class and that don't do a very good job in the class, turn the stuff in and get grumpy and just go on. The people that really do end up enjoying the class are the ones that say they didn't get all the points they wanted in one of the assignments. They'll go back, read what I had to say, ask me questions about it, reassess what they were doing, go back and attack it again, and come out with something that's a lot better. And so I just want you to be mindful of that, because it is a learning process. So don't get concerned if your only experience is two-dimensional or in the virtual realm. Don't be concerned about that, because you can use that and adapt it with what you're doing. And what I found is inevitably the people that are doing digital painting, the people that are doing game design, game development, and animation, as they become more aware of what's going on in the 3D world, it just makes their 2D stuff really pop even more. So it's really interesting. And also you come away from the class with those 4 tools of artistic critique and an enlarged vocabulary. And when you can pull out those 50-cent words at the drop of a hat whenever anybody asks you what you do, it makes you sound really smart. So just remember that for the future. Now, I think that is pretty much everything I wanted to talk about today, for the most part. And next week, we're going to look at some examples as people are doing their tiny houses and everything like that. Remember, the tiny house that you're building, it needs to look good. There's a certain expectation level. You guys are all working with as artists. If I've had somebody fold a piece of paper over and stand it on the fold and claim that was their house, and they did not do very well. I've also had people only turned in a couple photos, and since the requirement is 5 photos, that didn't go over really well. And like I told you, the worst one was that the person who just took a picture as they walked around the house that was set up in the middle of the ground. That didn't work very well. One of the coolest ones is somebody took several photos, and then the last one was actually a 3-second shot of him burning the house because he was so disgusted with it. And that one worked out really well. So that's kind of fun. There was something really important. Oh yeah. A couple things that I want to point out is it's really easy to get all the points if you turn stuff in, like I just said. One thing, my computer will not recognize HEIC files. And so please send everything as a part of a PDF or a JPEG. Don't send imagery as HEIC. But if I see the HEIC and I can't open it, then, and that's usually when you send it directly from your phone, then I'll just put a 0 in and ask you to please resend it. And as soon as you resend it, then I can give you the grade, because then I can see it. Another common one is if you don't have all of the things, for example, for attendance that you're supposed to, you don't have all 5 of them, then you'll just get a point for each of the things you do have, and then you'll just need to resubmit with all 5. It's an easy fix, and you get the points. It's important to remember that with Canvas, it doesn't allow you to submit things in addition to. When you make a submission for an assignment, it always erases everything else for that assignment. So if you have to redo something and you just have to include one more photo, send all of the photos again, because otherwise it will erase everything, and it is extraordinarily irritating. All right, that is actually everything that I needed to cover today. So what questions do you guys have for me?
I do have one question. It's about the kits. So I don't know if you've sent like an email out about them. I was waitlisted, so I only got in a day ago. But do you know when they will be ready and we can go pick
They
them up?
are already. I did send an email out, and I sent the email with a map as to where to find them. Are you very familiar with campus?
Yes, I was a tour
Okay.
guide for a little while, so
Okay.
very familiar.
The 5th level loading dock right behind the Norda Center for the Gunther Tech building, that's where the kits are.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so for everybody else who is not a tour guide, go to the south end of the Norda building or complex or center or whatever it's called. There is a little dinky road that goes behind it, and you go on that road. It's on the back side of the Norda building. So it's the side that faces the highway. And you get on that road at the south end of the Norda building. It's the end of the Norda that is on the opposite side of where the Gunther Tech building is. So, very opposite. Go around that, go on that little road. It's about maybe 75, 80 yards long. And then it will butt into the loading dock that is open. And all the kits are inside. There isn't a swing opening. There isn't a door that's open or closed. They're just under cover of that loading dock platform. And you'll see all the kits stacked up. You'll need to, when you pick it up, you or your agent who's working on your behalf will pick that up, fill out the info on the little clipboard that's right there, and that's your kit. And if you do not get the email, email me right away, let me know, and I will resend it to you. So Lynette, I need to send the email to you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. And who else? Okay, and Camden, you need one as well. Are both of you guys showing up in the Teams list?
I would hope so, but I'm
Okay,
not
it's
sure.
not automatic. I need to put it on, so I will double check that. And then one person, I emailed them a couple times, and then we found out that they had done something perfectly innocently that made the university system permanently shut their email out, so they weren't getting direct stuff from me. And they were able to fix it really quick. Everything's fine now. But I will, for Lynette and Camden, I will send that to you right after this meeting is over. For everybody else, if you have not gotten those emails, 2 emails, let me know as soon as possible. And get your kit, or have somebody go up and get your kit for you. The dock is open. and you can do that 24 hours a day. There's no restriction on it. They're remodeling the 5th floor, and that's one of the reasons why it's where they are, because there's no other way to get to them, essentially. All right, excellent question. Any other questions from anybody? All right, if that's it and there's no more questions, we are all done, and I will look forward to seeing you guys next Thursday. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful week and weekend until I see you next. All right? If you guys
Thank
do have any
you.
questions, email me and we'll we'll respond to them at the next class. Okay? Thank you guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you
Thanks.
later.
Bye.
Bye.